since last year, Federico, uh, like many people. So I need to just be fast with my intro so that we can go into what we have today. Today's session, we have a special guest, Jordan, and actually a session should have happened last year, but it's interesting that it's happening now. So it's a very good way to start our year. It's timely. You get strategy for growing your career in Excel. So making a career in Excel. And then just a quick word about us. This session is powered by your BizEdge, where Microsoft Excel, financial modeling, business intelligence, well, data analysis solutions company. So trainings and helping people become better. And in case you are in Nigeria or you are able to come to Nigeria for a training, then feel free to join our planned trainings. You can always check our website for all of these. So to the main uh, thing for today. Our speaker is Jordan Morris Goldmeier. He's going to be taking us through making a career in Excel. I'm sure many of us know him, but just so that I don't make that assumption for everyone, he's an internationally recognized analytics and data visualization expert. This is not just we using superfluous words. It really is. He's written books. He's the author of Advanced Excel Essentials, Dashboard for Excel, and the one I know more of, like, I think this will probably be the most popular of his book, that Becoming a Data Head. The titles and the concepts and everything, it's really something I think anybody who wants to grow a career in this field should have. And not to take too much time, he's also an Excel MVP. We're going to share his. Are you okay with us sharing your LinkedIn profile? And I'm also going to share your website in the chat box. So over to you, Jordan. Thanks for honoring us with your presence, and I'm out of the way, so you can take control.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. Absolutely, please find me on LinkedIn. If you ever, what happens is people email me, and then it's for whatever reason, because so much of my business is run by email. I'm going to be less likely to respond if you email me. So if you hit me up over LinkedIn, you want to say hello, hi, how are you? As long as you're not trying to sell me something, I'm here to chat with other folks just like me. We're all kind of in the same boat. So greatly appreciate you having me on to do this talk. I know I was supposed to do it last year. Unfortunately, some stuff happened. I mean, I'll tell you what happened. Hurricane Ida came through, and I was in a basement apartment and just flooded my apartment. So unfortunately, I had to get through that, but I did get through it, and I am back here. So it is 10 a.m. on a Sunday in New York City for me right now. So sorry that I don't look, maybe the best I've ever looked. But here it isn't about me or about how I look, but rather it is about you and what we can all learn together. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. And I just need to just let me make sure, because what happens is we start these things and then the chat box gets obscured. So I have to just kind of move some stuff around on my side to make sure that I can see the chat box. Okay, so here we are. We're going to talk about how to make it with Excel, how to turn it into a career. Let me say that when we start this presentation, and I'm just going to draw because I love drawing. Not that I'm necessarily good at it, but move this out of the way. Let me hit escape on that. Let's see, I think I accidentally hit this button. All right, we'll get it working here. All right, so how to make it, or however you want to call it. What does that mean? Okay, what do I mean by make it here? Well, let's think through this a little bit, because what I want to talk to you about today is kind of how to do it, like how you can be successful using Excel and turning it into something bigger. I know we started this with how to do a career in Excel, and I keep thinking, is that the right word? For the stuff I do, it's a career, right? People might not technically consider it a career for me, because I work for myself. They might consider that as a non-career. Well, here I'm just going to try to give you the tools for you to figure out what your career, what your job looks like, whether you work for someone else or you end up just kind of working for yourself. But there is a underlying thing I want to get across here, which is, let's say this is not going to be like a how to use Excel type presentation. It's more like, you've gone through your BizEdge classes, right? So now you're an expert, all right? You've gone through all of them. you've come through, you know this stuff. It's like, where do we go from here, right? That's the fundamental question. So I'm not here to show you how to become good at Excel. What I rather do is show you the thing that no one ever talks about, which is once you feel good, you feel confident and comfortable to go on, like what are the next things you can do? So one thing that's technically missing from this, but I'm going to try to work it in, is working for a company. I think that's not hard to do. I think, but we can spend a little bit more time on it at the end. But this is really more broadly if you want to follow kind of the career paths that Michael and myself have followed. What are different ways of thinking about it? How do you get in? That is what this talk is about. Okay, so I've split this really up into two sides because if you've taken my Excel courses, you know that there's really two sides of this. I always kind of teach the theory side and the tactical side. And so we're going to start with the tactical side. That just means here's what you do and how you do it, whereas the theoretical side is really like what's the abstraction, what's behind why you would do it, why do people do the things that they do, and how do we change the lens through which we see things. How can we do that to become successful? Okay, well, here we're going to just talk about the most important pieces of it. So I'm going to talk about the MVP award. As far as I know, no one else has really got into it as much as I'm going to try to go into it for you. So please make sure that as I go through that, you take notes, or since there is going to be a recording of this, if you need to rewatch it, I would do that. I am writing a book here. I just completed a course with LinkedIn Learning. So actually, the writing a book and doing an online course, I know I have that as a bonus here. I'm going to actually probably try to combine them as I go through it, because at least if you're doing it for someone else, like if you're doing an online course for someone else, very similar to writing a book, very similar structure. You can also speak at a conference. You could speak at something like this if you want to get a sense of how to get someone to say yes to that, how to come prepared, how to be successful. I'll give you that. And then on the theoretical side, I'll talk about really starting your own business in doing Excel, and why does it matter from a business standpoint. Believing in yourself, I'm sure we've all heard enough of that stuff, but it is true you're not going to be successful if you don't believe in your own ability to be successful. I mean, it's just the truth. Okay, so I don't want to get too stuck into that because I'm not like a promotional speaker, but there's also another side of it, right? That is just the truth of it. Okay, so let's get into it. Here's everything you need to know about the Microsoft MVP. So MVP stands for most, sorry about my handwriting here, most valuable professional. So it came about in the 80s. I don't really love the name, it's just like one of those older names for something, but that's what it's called. And what is an MVP anyway? Well, we'll get into that, but I'll say broadly, it is a award given for really two things, okay? Expertise. You have to be good at Excel in this case, or you can be Access, Teams, whatever you want. And it has to be something that you share, right? So it's not just good enough to be an expert on your own. You must be able to share it. I think arguably there are people in the world who would say you're not even an expert until you learn how to share it, right? So, we could debate that. I will say that I find a lot of so-called Excel experts on LinkedIn, and I wouldn't say, I say so-called not because that they're not, I don't really know them, so I can't vet them. But many of them have a very narrow focus of what they deliver. So if you think of Excel expertise as VBA, as many people still do, right, then you'll become obsessed with VBA, and your delivery will be purely in VBA. And what we're seeing in the world is that VBA is not the choice technology, and it is far becoming more that Excel experts do not identify with that. But the point here is that because of that narrow focus, many of these people aren't able to share what they do because they think that they want to be the best, and once you share, you open yourself up to criticism. And because of that narrow focus, they're not able to cover, what many Excel users are doing. It's almost too niched, right? All right, so the MVP process works like this, all right? So it used to be that you'd put people's names in, and then it would kind of go into a black hole, but Microsoft has done a much better job of really segmenting like where to send nominations, and also making sure that they have a 90-day turnaround. So that's kind of the new thing implemented in the last few years. So basically, it used to be anyone could nominate an MVP. Today, it must either be a Microsoft employee or another MVP. So if you are an MVP, or if you know an MVP, like myself or Michael, you could potentially prod us to nominate you, assuming that you have, because I do nominate people, but for me, there has to be a certain amount of output for me to feel comfortable. And most people I nominate, I should tell you, do not get it the first time around. I mean, I even nominated, I don't know if you've seen Kat Norton, Miss Excel. I nominated her. She does TikTok dancing videos early on, and I don't think I think in the initial round they didn't see it, but then later, she blew up. Not later, not that much later, like a week later, just she's blowing up. I think they reconsidered. So I just want to say that like most people I nominate do not get it the first time, the first thing that comes up. I even myself didn't get it. So don't feel discouraged by that. The easiest thing is just to not care. You don't need someone else's expertise to validate it for you. But being part of the MVP community is very nice. It has its advantages, and we'll talk about those. All right, so when you are nominated, the award goes from now to the previous part of the year, or excuse me, it goes from now, like it's like everything you've done in the year till now. Okay, so you need to think about the things that you've done. It's not so easy, like, oh, just give it to me. No, Microsoft wants validation that you've done things, and they're looking for free community stuff, all right, as well as established expertise. So blog, YouTube, something like that. Plus, what are your community activities? And there's some essay questions, so make sure you spend time on those. Now, according to the feedback, or according to the Microsoft MVP committee, there's 3 things that they're looking for. And I got this from their deck, and this is like the only part I'm allowed to reuse from their deck, because the other parts are kind of their trade secrets. So here's the things they're looking for. They want, according to them, product feedback. So if you do well on that, what do we like? What do we dislike about Excel? You are allowed to insult Excel as an MVP. Most of us don't because we like the tool, but there are things that we want. So they are looking for an opinion, right? It's not just enough to just, oh, Excel is great and you can do anything, but Microsoft is really looking for you to be a speaker for their customers, right? How do you come and advocate for their customers? Next part fluidly works into that is customer advocacy. So you are the interface between them and their customers in the base that you represent. So having an opinion on stuff means that you're actually representing them, right? And then finally, healthy community. It's not enough to just do this on an island by yourself. Part of becoming an MVP is developing a community. Nowadays, there are so many different ways to develop a community. Like I said, with regards to Kat, she saw this need on Instagram and TikTok and built this huge community. In some ways, it's almost like faster than many people really accepted, or I should say, the ways you can build community is growing faster than our ability to even understand and articulate what a community is. What that means is that the internet has the ability to create communities we have not even dreamed up yet. So don't get stuck in, I want to do what someone else did. Just start thinking to yourself, what can I do? How do I support my community? Whether that's local, through meetups, whether that's online, those things are very important. Now, all that being said, thank you for that, Michael. I see the icons coming through. This is still very much a technical award. Okay, so that means that you can be a person who brings like an Excel facilitator. There's plenty of data people out there who may not themselves be data scientists, but do a great job of like facilitating data events. They know enough. They bring people together. This is a technical award. So even giving this presentation to you right now does not technically count towards the technical part of my MVP. If I did this all year, I would not get an MVP, right? Because I'm talking about the MVP program, which is technically not technical. Think about that for a second. Technically not technical. Okay, so here's the thing, all right? I can't speak for the nomination committee. They change stuff every few years. I'm just giving you last time I talked to them. So don't be beholden. Well, Jordan said I could get it, because I don't really know that you can get it. I don't speak for them. I just know persistence, consistency, all the old mantras, all that stuff. It tends to pay off if you are shooting for an MVP award. Okay, so here are the things that here are my thoughts on it. All right. So if you are wondering, well, I want to become an MVP, but I also want to sell online courses and do all that stuff, how do I make sure I get it? Because if you're too focused on the business, you will not get it. So the way I look at it is, um, if you look at a seesaw, right? So you must have generally more free content than not, okay? This will help you understand it. So the more free activities you're doing, the more likely you're going to get it. Now, this actually works out. Microsoft didn't dream up the internet, right? They wouldn't know that Gary Vaynerchuk would say, yeah, I don't know if you guys listen to Gary V, the entrepreneur guy on Instagram, right? And he's got podcasts, all what have you, right? So I don't think that they planned that he would say something like, well, just give everything away from free and a business would come. They weren't thinking that way. When Microsoft came up with this award, initially it was people helping people on forums on CompuServe, right? In the late 80s, early 90s. That's how it started. I mean, that's how long ago it started. And the way to build a business back then was different than the way we build a business today. So at that time, when people were MVPs, they were just doing it because they loved it. They usually had jobs already, and they were just kind of there, and they had their community. It wasn't necessarily, oh, I'm going to turn an MVP into having, I'm going to take that and turn it into having a job. But I will say that having one does help, and I'll get into that. So luckily right now, the internet is like, I just want to point this out from a business standpoint. The social media favors giving things away for free. So if you are already doing that, right? If you're already doing that, then it will be a lot easier for you to get an MVP award. You don't have to overthink it in the way that I had to do 10 years ago to make sure that I was not just like, solving problems that people paid me for. I had to make sure that my problems got exposure. And what I want to offer to you is, these days we're like, you can hang around people, oh, it's all been done, there's nothing new under the sun. That's not wrong. I don't deny that, but the amount of opportunity that we have not thought up yet, we're all just thinking, how do we make money now while our market is constantly changing? So I just want you to think towards the future and think, well, what problems have not been solved? How do I get involved in ways I haven't before? So we see, I wrote here, social media outlets are exploding. I think I, initially came up with this talk only a year or so ago. In that time on LinkedIn, I went from maybe a handful, I shouldn't say a handful. I mean, I had like 6,000 followers. Now I have 17,000. And that's on the back of a few really good social media posts, as well as consistency. I didn't know LinkedIn was going to be this big. I think right now LinkedIn is giving away so much organic views because they're growing, and that's what social media companies do. They give away organic views in exchange for you giving them content, right? So LinkedIn is very big right now, but there's TikTok, there's all other social medias that systems that haven't come out yet, that are just starting. I mean, I see people doing stuff on Telegram. I don't know how to do Excel over Telegram, but someone's doing it. Someone solved the Excel over TikTok Instagram problem. You can solve these other problems, all right? So the world is your oyster, as we say, right? Because there's so much opportunity with regard to that. Rather than look and say, well, everyone else is doing the same thing already, you have a chance to do something different. And like I said, you can use social media now more efficiently to actually allow you to get an MVP more efficiently. So here are reasons why people often get rejected from being an MVP. First of all, many people assume they've been rejected. They assume they've been rejected without even being without having applied first. Okay, so there are people out there who are good at Excel, and because the nomination process requires either another Microsoft employee or an MVP, and there's only like 80 Excel MVPs in the world. If you're not getting in through them, you can feel like, oh, this is another time I didn't get it, or no one knows about me. You can feel kind of down in the dumps. And even the most experienced people who, have businesses, but if they struggle with insecurity, if they haven't crossed that bridge specifically, like with the MVP, it's very easy to go into that thinking. And I know folks like that, is why I'm saying that. And I went through it myself. But a lot of people assume they've been rejected when they just didn't know, the committee just didn't know about them. So one thing is, if you feel like your content is good enough, find an MVP and just say, hey, what do you think about putting me in? I'll be honest, what I think you need more of. If you're not coming to me with a kit of stuff, here's all this stuff I'm doing, then you need more of it. If you come to me and say, well, I want to talk to you about like what I should do differently. I haven't done anything yet. Then my answer is you need to go out and do stuff first. A lot of people won't have enough free content, so they sell online courses. I've seen this happen. People do really good with social media, so they sell these online courses. They don't have anything for free, so Microsoft just thinks they're selling stuff, right? The content has no direction. I don't want you to get too obsessed with this idea if you're just starting out. Like, you need to put content out, so just put it out, figure out what the direction is. But if you're wondering why you're not getting an MVP and you're already putting content out, well, it's because it's probably all over the place. You're not focusing on the areas that you're good at, on the stuff that people like to see. If you don't have any consistency in your content, whether that's a matter of quality, timing, you're not putting it out very much, or you're putting it all out in 1 month, this is the type of stuff that will work against you. If you view an MVP as a certification of expertise and you tell Microsoft that, it's like, when you're applying for university here, you don't want to be like, well, I want to apply to you because you're the best, right? They don't want to hear that. So that is a reason why they won't accept you. It's not necessarily they want to see your community activities. They want the kind of like actions speak louder than words type thing, right? And a lot of people will just kind of give up before they're even done. So it took me 3 years to get an MVP. I think Chris Newman got one shortly after me. He's a spreadsheet guru. But I think his story is very interesting because I felt I was too good for all these podcasts, for all these different ways of running your email system. I was like, I don't want to do that. That's not me. I really just didn't have time for it. I sort of projected my own judgment on myself onto others. But, it took me 3 years, I think, since starting my first blog, or maybe 4 or 5 years, now I think about it. My first blog post, between that and getting it. On the other hand, Chris Newman, I think that he started a blog and he really focused on how to share things with people. I don't think it took him as long. And I just remember just reflecting upon that as he got one, that because he really had read up on the internet and understood how people share and the types of things that bring people to your site, that this actually did help them. So keep in mind that even if you don't want to start a business, all this stuff does help you out. Ultimately, though, it is about your customer, your audience. All right, so next is I want to talk to you about book writing. This one is very near and dear to me because I feel like of all the things I have down, of all the processes I know how to repeat, writing a book I'm very good at. And right now we are in the golden age of books, and I'm going to add a little piece to here. I'm going to say and an online course because I just completed an online course, like I said, and it's so similar to writing a book, and that helped me out a lot. So in addition to being in the golden age of books, I would say, and I'm not going to even spell it out, I'll just put a big R, but we are in the Renaissance. So the same metaphor, just said differently, of online courses. So I feel the same way, Renaissance or golden age doesn't really matter. I'm sure a history person out there is like, well, no, excuse me, there is a difference between the golden age and the Renaissance. Fine. The metaphors are the same, right? And what I want to say about this is where it used to be like you pitch a book and they look at their big, set of books and say, well, what are we missing, right? Oh yeah, you can fill in that market niche that we have validated and we've spent tons of money on. But nowadays what's happening is book companies and online course companies are seeing that there are broader audiences that they did not realize existed because they went or I should say there's more niche audiences they didn't realize existed because they thought that there was this set group of people who bought their book and that was it, right? But nowadays what we see is that there are courses and books on anything and everything, and that many people are attracted to buy a book or an online course because they want to learn from you. They're not trying to necessarily fill in a hole that they feel about themselves, right? They love continuous learning, and we all like to learn from each other. So if this is you and you're thinking, oh, all the courses have been done, there's too many books out there, no offense, but you're wrong, right? We haven't even begun to tap into the global audiences that are just, building right now. So don't think small on this. Think about what you love to do and how you're going to do it. Okay, so in particular, O'Reilly Publishing, I see they're picking up authors like never before. They were the first company I ever pitched a book to in, I think, 2014, maybe it was 15. That was my dashboards book, and it was really all over the place what I pitched. And they said no. Nowadays, they probably say yes. But they had already they went through their books, and they're like, we have books that cover this. So, but nowadays I see that they're picking up really niche topics like Excel for blank. Also, another publisher that I have not done work with, but I see my friends use is Pact Publishing. I think I think that they are semi-traditional, semi-hybrid because they're mainly, I think, doing online books. But most publishers today, in any case, they're really focusing on doing more online stuff anyway. So, like, I think Pact's thing is an ebook. I could be wrong. Sorry if the Pact, if anyone knows, they feel free to correct me. But that's what it seems like. And then if you want to order the book, it's print on demand. Well, that's the future anyway. I mean, that's why they built a company around that. But both O'Reilly and Pact are saying yes to stuff that they might not have said yes before. So just throwing that out there in case you want to go pitch your book. Now, writing a book is fun if you like writing, if you enjoy writing. That's great. If you enjoy deadlines, I love deadlines. I used to not love them. I hated them, but I learned because I have to run my own company. I learned to love the deadline, right? And one big thing people think is that, oh, they'll just do nights and weekends for their book. And it always consumes way more time than they're expecting. So don't pick one up if you are overly committed to other projects. I've been there. I've worked with other authors. I mean, it just it stinks when you're like, we need to get this done. And they're like, I got to work on the book, right? So here is the book writing process, okay? It all starts with a book proposal. I mean, really, we can start with the pre-process of it. So basically, here's what happens, okay? You have a query. That's what they call it, the book query. I have this idea, okay? Ding, I got an idea, right? So I go pitch it. Usually, you can pitch it through some sort of channel that they have, like authors at O'Reilly.com. I don't know if that's the right one. One other thing that you could do that I've never done, but find an acquisition editor is what they're called on LinkedIn from a company that you like and go pitch it directly to them, or just send them a message over LinkedIn. In any case, you're going to talk to an acquisition editor. So an acquisition, they're bringing it in, right? They're acquiring it. They're going to give you feedback. Usually they're going to ask for a full proposal at this point. So the full proposal, I'll tell you about it up here in a second. But the proposal is they're going to give you a template, and then they're going to ask you to fill it out. It's going to have everything on it from your name, all that stuff. What they're looking for is like social media. Do you have an audience that we know we can sell it to? And they're looking for very limited market research, not the kind of stuff that all of us would be doing as analysts, but rather just like how many books are out there that are like yours, because they want to make sure that there's an established market for it. And how many do they have that's like it, because they want to see if they can combine them or do premiums and stuff, do promotions, I should say, with them together. They just want to make sure that that niche fits for them and that there is a market. So you just got to go out to Amazon, look at the books. I mean, really, you just pick the books you love that inspired you. So they just need to see that. Basically, the book proposal, though, all of them, whether it doesn't matter the company, they want the title, 2 to 3 paragraph description of what it looks like, table of contents. Usually they want a first chapter, okay, because they need to make sure that you can write. If you have blog posts, you could do that. But I would tell you all, it will help you out a lot if you have your first chapter written by the time you present your book proposal to them. If you're like, I can't sit down and write a first chapter, I don't know what it's going to be about, well, then you're not ready yet, okay? Note that what you write in that first chapter could eventually just change by the end of the book, and it usually does. But they just need to know that you can write and that you can string ideas together. So don't care. I mean, that's the answer, is don't make it perfect, make it readable, make it good. Don't dump your ideas out on them. Hey, I have a book. Here's all my ideas. I'm going to copy and paste my notes from Google Drive. Okay, I hate that. I have offered to help people out, introduce them to acquisition editors. Like, that's never going to get past it. All right, what they need is like a proposal. They need your idea in like very succinct language in a proposal that shows that you can organize your thoughts. It shows that you can write about them, things like that. All right, so assuming that you make it to the proposal stage, you fill out your proposal. It's going to go to an editorial board. I'm going to write EB. So we have acquisition. They review the proposal, goes to the board. Okay, so they may come back with feedback, in which case they're just like, we like this and this. We want you to change that. Usually it's such basic stuff like, we want more hands-on stuff. Did you think about this technology? Not stuff that you should get an ego about. If they have major feedback, then you got to take that feedback if you want to move forward. So you update all that feedback. They go back to the board. Then they approve the book, and you enter into the negotiation phase of the contract. And here's the deal about negotiating books. first of all, if like, because I love negotiating, but what people don't realize is when you negotiate, like the people you should negotiate with, or you can negotiate with, if you feel like you're not good at negotiating, the people who aren't good at negotiating don't realize that they're negotiating with people who don't negotiate. Okay, acquisition editors negotiate, so they know how to do this. But remember your position as well. If you're a first-time author, you don't have much of a position to stand on. There's not a whole lot of things you can ask for. But here are the easy things you can ask for, all right? So they usually will give you 10 to 20 free books. Those are going to go fast because you promised them to your uncle, your sister, your nephew, your old teacher who's so proud of you. You promised them out, you know, your rabbi, your priest, everyone in the community. So 20 books is what they'll usually offer, somewhere between 10 and 20. Those are going to be gone like in an instant, all right? So here's what I'll tell you. Ask for 50. I asked for 100 on one of mine, and they came back with 50. I was like, okay, deal. So I knew they weren't going to give me 100, but it was worth a shot. I wanted more than like 15, you know? So 50 is, I think, a reasonable number they'll say yes to. They'll just mail it to you. That's like a nice one that'll get you through the year. The other thing is fewer and fewer publishers are offering advances now because, you know, the books don't make as much money. They're in a portfolio. There's an expectation that you're just going to do it anyway. And the advance that they give you is like still the advance they might have given. They would have given you more of an advance 10 years ago. So just think about that, okay? You could have gotten a larger advance 10 years ago, and that money would have gone farther, at least in the US, because of inflation, right? So the advance industry is kind of going down, but if you want to negotiate for stuff, here's the problem, okay? So they say, oh, we'll give you an advance and we'll give it to you at each milestone. Well, it's your responsibility to bug them, all right? And the finance departments of publishing companies are like running on 1980s mainframe technology. So anything complicated you try to do with them, like, oh, I want this here at this point, they don't know how to do, and they're not set up for it. So just know if you ask for an advance, you're going to chase them for it. My view is I try to ask for as much of it as up front as possible because I don't want to chase them for it. And yeah, I mean, like what happens is the last one they forget. They just forget to send it to you, and you're like, I mean, this happens all the time. So try to get as much of it as you can. Note that advance goes against royalty, so you must make it up in royalties, book sales. So it's not like it's just free money, but if you feel like you want an advance, that's how to negotiate it. How much money are you going to make? Well, publishers almost always going to say they have no idea because they don't want to tell you and they don't want to put a promise on it. And even more so, the reality is that they're thinking in terms of a portfolio, right? So they don't really care how your single book's going to do. What they care is that they have 100-some books and that most of them are going to do well. Some of them are going to do super well that are going to carry the day, right? That's why they're in business. And some of them are going to be flops. Like, you know, that's it. That's life, right? So they're not interested in your book necessarily, and they can't really answer that for you. But what you can ask for is book scan data. I don't know if they're always allowed to share it, but you can always ask, okay? So Nielsen owns all the like data. Basically, I mean, as far as the U.S. goes, I don't know globally. I'm assuming that they have a global reach as well. But Nielsen owns like, you know, they are checking what I'm watching. They do a lot of the book scan data. You know, when you buy a book in the U.S., it'll go into their database and they can report it back to you. So, you know, they do have these like non-sharing agreements because if everyone gave their data away, they wouldn't have a business. But your publisher likely has access to it, so you can ask. You should assume kind of a 10,000 book. I say 10,000 here. This is probably closer to the book I just wrote. Most books, most technical books, like I'm trying to see if I have it on my shelf here. I don't have it in front of me. But like Advanced Excel Essentials is more of a tech book, whereas my last one is more of like a tech business book. It has overlapping parts, but you can really assume 2 to 10K book units will be sold with an average 2-year shelf life, because especially a technology book changes on average about 2 years. So you could take this number, right? So you assume that you're going to sell 2,000 books. You know, you multiply that by a potential sale price, then you multiply that by your royalty rate, which is usually going to be somewhere between 10 and 20%, probably on the lower end if you're a first-time author. And then you do the math. I'm not going to do the math here, but that's kind of how you can figure out how you're going to do it. Divide it by 2 years. That's how much you're going to make a year. If you really want to like figure it out, most of your book sales are going to come early. So, you know, you'll make about 80% of your book sales, of your major book sales within that first year. So you can kind of then multiply it 80%, 20% if you want to do some forecasting. Do you make money on books? The answer is no. Okay, like I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to make a whole lot of money on books, selling books, but it's your big business card because you can use that to get contracts and you can use that to get a job. Like I have brought my book to people interviewing me early on when I was looking for a job. And I don't know if that's what landed it for me, but it helps to come in and say, well, here's a book anyway, right? That's kind of like how I'm selling myself. Whether you hire me or not, have my book. Because even if they don't hire you, now your book's sitting there, right? Like you're still the expert. All right. So that's how to do it. That's how to land a job with it. When you write a book, when you've gotten the contract and you're sitting down to write, here's the rules, okay? People get stuck because they want to do the jobs of other people for them. Your team, remember, you have a team here, and anything that's worth doing in the world, even though it looks like I'm by myself here talking to you, I have a team of people, right? I have a virtual assistant, I have an accountant, I have a lawyer, I have people who help me get through the business, right? So you must remember that your team is here to help you edit. So people don't turn anything in because they don't like what they write, forgetting that there are editors to help them out. So what happens is you write, you send that off. There's going to be someone called a developmental editor, and they're running the show. Like they're kind of the director for your movie, right? Same thing with online courses. I did the one with LinkedIn. They have a person there who, well, I don't think they're calling him a developmental editor, but they help run the course. They're the project manager. Okay, so you write your pages. Here's your writing like that. You send it to the developmental editor. Assuming there's no whoa, this writing sucks moments, they're going to send it over to a technical editor. Like they'll just send it. They're just going to look through it real quick and send it straight off. Technical editor comes back with feedback. They're going to send it now back to the developmental editor, who's going to do an extra review if that developmental editor feels that like it needs, things. The developmental editors like, you need to move this around. We like to open paragraphs this way. This is what our title case looks like. Stuff like that, formatting. And also just like, they're usually very good writers too. So they know how to write, and they're going to tell you, this sounds better than this. So they'll send it back to you, and then you'll make those fixes. And assuming that you have nothing extra to do with it, and you're not rewriting it, it doesn't need to go back to a technical editor. It's then going to go to the copy editor. So the copy editor reads it for, for punctuation, misspellings, things like that. They'll send it back to you for feedback. Once you're good with that, it goes to the proofing editor or the print editor, and we're going to look at it, what it looks like in print. And then finally, it goes to print. And you do that with all your chapters. And again, just write. Like, honestly, I'm going to be real with you. I write my chapters, and I don't always even proofread them because I know there's 7 editors who are going to look at them. On the one hand, on the other hand, there are 3 typos in my latest book, and that's driving me nuts. Even though my stuff is full, admittedly, my stuff has lots of typos because I have, I have ADD and some dyslexia. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. The typos, they're distracting, and I'm trying to move to typo 0, to a world without them. But also just note that once it goes through 7 people and nobody found an error, like, should I really feel that bad? Like, if 7 other people didn't find it, I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's just the way of the world. So here's the thing, all right? You should write less when you're writing because everyone wants to make things big. But whenever I write it all, I put it all out there, it goes through the editing, and then through that second editing phase, I knock out so much, okay? So the book I turned into Wiley was 399 pages. The book that went to print was 219, just to let you know how much I knocked out. So write less. When I say discuss more, what I really mean by that is use the good stuff, that complicated stuff that you feel like you needs to get out. Use like this moment here for that. So go up and discuss that stuff. It doesn't have to all be in the book. Make the book straightforward, and very good right now to focus on niche topics. It's so nice to see your book on a shelf, but it's not like what it used to be. Books do not immediately go to shelves anymore because people don't buy books in bookstores anymore. So don't necessarily expect to see your book on the shelf. Most books are print on demand these days, so I order it on Amazon. It goes to a printer, and the print sends it out because this keeps a just-in-time inventory. And who wants to carry inventory in the time of internet? They will likely sell a lot on ebooks, and they will likely push that a lot. And here's the real cherry, okay? So I've never had this happen before except for my last book. But up until my last book, I never had this happen. So my book is going to be translated in Chinese and Russian and German, okay? So huge markets. This, in fact, and this is not going to happen, I think, until 2023. But this, in fact, is where you make money on a book. So you won't make money by writing a book, but if you have multiple books and one of them goes to translation, right, then you're opening up to other markets. That's what makes like huge bestseller books. So things like Data Science for Business is a book that's very comparable to ours. That's what we did our market research on, and Data Smart. Those are the two books that we said were very similar to ours, all right? I think both of them, or at least the first one, have gone on to sell probably $1 million worth, which is probably 30 to 40,000 units. I say probably, but I don't really know. So I see there's a question on here that Michael had asked. I think, Michael, I'm going to go to the end. I'm going to answer that question at the end with Pact, okay? But thank you for sharing that, because that's so prescient and timely. All right, so you guys, if you want to take a screenshot of this real quick, I'll let you. Here are the acquisition editors who I know. Oops, let me go back. Here are the acquisition editors I know personally who have allowed me to put their information on the slide. Please don't just say, hey, what's up, or I have an idea. Please go with like a full idea to them. As I said, don't dump your ideas. So the person, I don't know anyone at Pact, but I will say, in particular, Bill Jelen, maybe you've heard of him, Mr. Excel, great guy. He has said to me that he'll publish anything. So if you have an idea, I mean, I can't speak for him, but if you have a wacky, wicked idea, he's the guy to go to. He runs his own press, so he can do whatever he wants, and is a lot more flexible with regard to schedules and things. Hopefully, I'm not saying go be late, but you're working with someone in the Excel community, so that's like a great way to go. Obviously, I know Jim from Wiley. He's my acquisition editor. Joan, I wrote 2 books for A-Press. She's not the one I worked with, but kind of the one who I spoke with later on. And then with Michelle, she works with O'Reilly. And so if you want to get in with O'Reilly, they're the ones with the animals on the cover. These are the people to talk to. But I would say just send them to everyone if you have an idea. Just send it everywhere and see who comes up. All right, so conference gigs. Let's talk about that. And speaking, conference gigs are really, I think that they're really easy to find. You can go to websites like Eventbrite, just look up who has conferences, then reach out to the organizer and say, hey, you looking for anyone? Here's the answer. They're always looking for people. They're a great way to extend your brand, and they pay terribly. They usually do not pay well. But also people leave money on the table, which is to say, I was at a conference with a colleague, and I told him how much they were paying me, and he's like, I didn't get anything. I wasn't paid. And I was like, well, what did you ask? And they're like, well, they didn't offer me anything. I said, well, I mean, like, I don't want to sound like a jerk here, but I learned that the hard way. Like, you'll leave money on the table by not asking. So here's the secret way to ask for money with a conference. You just say, and what is the honorarium? That's the word that they use if they don't want to pay you, but they want to give you some compensation. You say, what is the honorarium for this event? And that's kind of how to do it. The other thing is, you have to set a standard for yourself. I did a lot of free stuff before. This year, I'm tamping down on the free stuff that's not like this. This I'll always do because I love this. But if you're a conference, and you want to talk to me and you say, well, it'll help your exposure, I'm just going to say, look, I can't do it for free. Like, I just can't do it for free right now. And that's the facts. Like, sorry. Well, I mean, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. All right. So here's the things that conferences want. But I do say I love conferences, and a great way to meet people once we're all back sitting next to people. But, right now it's a little different. On the other hand, lots of people are looking for speakers right now. So it's also a great time to get in. All right, so here's the thing to note is a lot of people think they're going to be judged by the conference reviewers, whether their content's good enough. Here's the thing, the people who develop the conferences may have a background, but they're not practitioners in Excel because their practice right now is running conferences. So they don't know enough to say whether you're an expert or not. They believe that you can present yourself as an expert, and that's enough. So don't even worry about, oh, should I talk about this or that? They want you to come up with what you want to talk about and then show up and talk. Here is a great example of that, okay? So I can't remember if I reached out to Michael or if he reached out to me, but the idea here is I didn't come to him and say, well, what do you need me to talk about? I just came and was like, this is my idea, this is what we're doing, and it kind of leaves it to him to say, that's a fit or that's not a fit, can you tweak this or do that? Thankfully, when it comes to this sort of stuff, like usually it's kind of like the speaker comes in and does what they want, but the point here is that I come as a kit. I come as the thing that they say yes to, and it makes it a lot easier than me saying, well, what's your idea? Because many people will sit there and talk to you about their ideas, but they can't execute them. on them. A conference person is looking for someone to like be reliable, etc. So in thinking about what they're looking for, obviously engage in content, good ratings. Can you get people to attend? Do you fill the whole time? Are you ending too early? Are you ending too late? It's okay to end early. Don't you end late. Okay. Like, I mean, to be honest, like even if we sat here and said, Michael said, well, if you want to stay a few extra minutes to have Jordan talk, that's all your choice. But if you're out at a conference and people want to eat, they want to go back and drink a beer, like don't get between them and having fun. Okay. You know what I mean? So don't end late. I always end early. I don't want to ever end late. Things that they are looking for is being inoffensive. So look, you and your buddies at a bar might tell jokes that you think are funny. And if you guys are funny with your chums, just know that not everyone in the world thinks you're that funny. Okay. I don't know what to say. The jokes that, if you want to tell jokes that were funny in the 90s, if they were ever even funny at all, but if you want to tell this like crude humor that's offensive to people, I'm just saying you're putting your own sort of future in your hands. Most times you sign the code of conduct. So not most times, 100% of the time there's a code of conduct. And if you violated it, I don't know what to say. Like, I didn't sign it for you. I don't really care what people's opinions are on that. Very important to be reliable and consistent. Here's a way to be reliable. So Michael and I did not talk about me coming on early, at least if he did, I don't remember. I'm sorry. But I came on because it's just my habit before I go to a conference or before I speak to come on 10 to 15 minutes early or 20 minutes early. No one has to tell me that. I just come on, and thankfully they were already on. And I love that because that means that they know what they're doing and I know what I'm doing, and we can run like smoothly and in sync. So like if you come early, if you show that sort of stuff, even if they don't tell you to do it, this is what will make you successful, what gets you asked back, what makes people think that you're a reliable and consistent person. So what conferences need are a title, an abstract, usually a long form description that will go on their website. They want an expected duration. This is very important, okay? Most conference talks want a key takeaway section, right? So what is someone going to leave? How do you transform their skills? What are they going to leave with by watching this, right? Usually they need an audience. Like, who's your audience? Mine's usually analysts. I mean, skill level, beginning, intermediate, advanced. That's usually kind of what they're looking for. The technology required to get it done. I always say, come to my stuff, bring a Windows machine. People don't always do that, but I say it. Also helps LinkedIn URL, a bio, and a high-res picture. So if you actually say to someone, hey, are you looking for talks? And they're like, yeah, let's talk about it. And then you hop on the phone and you're like, here's what I have for you, because I already have this built sitting on my drive, my title, abstract, my description, key takeaways. I do have all this built. So if someone says, and I show this to them, they go, oh, this is great. It just needs to be in our template. Sometimes I'm like, well, maybe you can get someone there to put in your template. But most times I'll put in the template for them, just kind of like what's available to me. Often, in non-COVID times, they usually need your plane tickets, your flight information, where you're staying, just so they know you arrived at the conference on time. So the things that they're going to ask about are like, do you have an audience? Does it fit nicely in our tracks? Does it fit with the themes that we're doing? I'm speaking to someone on Tuesday about this. So they wanted me to speak at their conference. I already know they're going to ask this stuff. So I'm already kind of ahead of the game, and I'll make it a very quick call. And you also just don't want to compete with similar topics, right? They want to make sure that it's not already done. Okay, so the types of talks you can have, you can do business intelligence talks, data science talks, this type of talk. There are things what I would call a show me demo. So this is how you do something in Excel. This is the core of most of my like talks that are not like this, right? I usually do like some data visualization thing. Usually in this case, in a 45 to 90 minute thing, students don't have access. They're just following along, but maybe they have the recording and they can do it later. Then you can do a workshop. These are usually deep dives. Now, here's the thing. If you can get one of these pre-conference workshops, these are actually have money to be made. Less and less these days, but there is money to be made. So what happens is before the workshop, they're looking for people to like do a intense like deep dive for 1 to 2 days. In the past, it was like what would happen is if you could bring an audience, they would charge a high ticket price, and then you would share 50-50. That's like how you would make money at a conference. That is going away at a hurtling rate because of COVID, and because it is in fact a very bad business model for them. And I would never run a business model that way, because you pay speakers a flat rate and they show up and they tell you how many people they're comfortable with sharing. And especially with online, it doesn't matter how many people show up. If you are going to do a very fast-paced one, if you are doing like, letting people share their screens, it could matter, but ultimately it's the same amount of people who always interact anyway, versus when you're doing it live, and you're in front of 60 people. Okay, so live in-person events. So this was written before COVID, but I'm gonna keep this stuff on here. So you should always email your contact if it's live. If you're going somewhere, the moment you've got off the plane, just let them know that you're there. Then you're supposed to register at a booth, and you usually get swag, and you get to go hang out in teachers round or teachers lounge. This part here, like I said, I always do this. Come 20 minutes early to the venue that you're going to be speaking at. If you're going to be speaking live at a venue and you're able to get in there beforehand, I always do that. Just go. Like I did a training for H&M and in New Jersey, and so a week before I went to the training room, or a week before the talk, I went to the training room and just scoped it out. What am I going to have access to? What kind of plugs do I need? If you're at a hotel, you can just go walk in. Security stops, you just tell them what you're doing, and they'll usually let you go through. Become friendly with your tech person, because they're going to be miking you up, and they're just usually nice people, and they're not always respected. So just become friendly with them. They're going to help you out. And like I said, they're usually really nice people, run a lot of events, usually very calm, because they're dealing with a lot of stuff that goes wrong. So become friends with them, and they'll hook you up and make sure that you're set. Bring lots of dongles, right? I do this less so now because I just I feel like I lose them. And but if this is your first time and you don't know what kind of plugs that they're going to use, just bring a lot, just in case that these things, they break. These like things that plug in, they break. So don't just become prepared. All right, so for virtual stuff like this, you want to hardline into your router like I'm doing. You have to bring the energy because you don't have an audience talking to you. You are expected to maximize the time, because there's not as many breaks. Decide beforehand how you'll deal with questions. Again, Michael and I talked about how we're going to deal with questions before we started this. So this is just very common stuff. Use nice equipment if you can. I didn't use nice equipment on day one because I didn't have money, but I'm growing a business, and I took that money and I reinvested it into stuff like this Yeti microphone. Right now, my drawing tablet actually is very kind of cheap, so that's probably the next thing that's going to be updated. Just understand that live class size affects your ability to deliver. Here's the irony, all right? The smaller the class, the slower you go, right? The more questions people ask, the less you can usually do. The larger the class, the more you have to go speedy, right? So you usually get done more. This is the great people are like, well, if there are more people, do you charge more? And I just say, listen, I actually have more of a minimum. If you want me to do an intimate thing, that's going to cost more versus doing a larger thing. So, all right. So you almost always have more content than you have time. As proof of that, it's 10:53, and I have all these. Oh wait, hold on. Let me see. Let me go back on that. I still have so much more I want to say, right? And that's just the truth of it for me. You will likely have more content than you have time for. I'm not big on the screen switching, so I like to keep things I like to draw. I don't want to go from PowerPoint to code, keep going back and forth. So make sure you segment those into longer segments. If you're on slides, stay on slides for 5 minutes. If you're on code, stay on code for 5 minutes. Don't be switching back and forth. If you don't ask for cash, you will not receive any. Create strategic partnerships. This really helps you get in, and then this is what allows you to get bigger things and become part of a conference, become part of the planning committees, things like that. So referring speakers to them, they love that because that does their job, makes their job easier, and you vouch for their expertise. So introduce the organizers to people you know. And just remember, nobody really cares what you did or said. I mean, I'm sorry, but don't get too obsessed in your mind with the idea that you're going to blow it up and it's going to be bad. I've watched people who I respect in the data community have bomb a presentation because someone challenged them on something, and it just kind of knocked out the energy. But it didn't stop them. I mean, they're still going. And so I wouldn't say I bombed one talk in my life that was before. It wasn't a talk. It was a corporate training because they all said they were Excel experts, and I made a huge mistake. I believed them. And I was telling them stuff. They're like, when would we use this? This is, I mean, they didn't even understand absolute versus relative references. And I thought, wow, why did I do that? So, those are the things to keep in mind. Okay, so let's dive into some theoretical concepts here. First of all, come as a kit. That means make it very easy for people to say yes. When people are like, I want to do this, don't jump into a strategy session as everyone wants to do today. Oh, let's do a strategy session. Truth is, to make someone say yes, come complete. This solves my problem right now. So come as a kit. This is something I always believe in. I come with, I came with my slides. I came with my stuff. Makes it very easy when you're trying to figure things out and what to do. Okay, I'm going to just go through these really quickly, and then we'll hit some of the questions. So data is always greater than decisions, which is to say, don't regret a decision you made. Just regret the fact that you didn't have the right data at the right time to make the decision that you wanted to make. Because all the decisions you make are based on the data you have at the time. So you shouldn't regret making a bad decision. You should regret not having the information that would have allowed you to make that decision. But now you know. I mean, sometimes you just have to do it. Everything optimizes. So as you can see, coming as a kid is optimizing. Coming on time, knowing how things work optimizes. So that's how you're able to do more with less when you start a business with this. And then finally, just fail anyway. Like, who cares? Like, oh, I'm afraid of failing. Well, we're all failing. I mean, like, you just go out and fail anyway. It just doesn't matter. You made the decision at the time you made it. It was wrong. You failed, but you made the decision, and that's what makes it the right decision. Okay, so I don't really have a whole lot of time on doing kind of like the turning it into a business side of this, because I think that requires its own talk. So let me just throw out some future thoughts for you so that you can go well. So how do you position yourself? Are you a data scientist? Are you an influencer? Like, I'm trying to do this data influencer thing. I don't really like calling myself that because I think people on LinkedIn will be turned off by it. I don't really care what you call me. Just don't call me late for dinner. Wah, wah. But you get the point, right? So figure out what you want to call yourself. Understand that VBA is going away. So it's turning into COBOL, basically. What COBOL was, VBA is now just an old business language. The future is Python and JavaScript and low-code methods, okay? Not saying you can't do VBA, but I don't think VBA, and I'm an expert in VBA, I just don't think it's as interesting as it used to be, and it's not what it's going to be. All right, so desktop and online are going to blend. I mean, it's already happening. Finally, no, I don't know how to bring NFTs and the blockchain into Excel, but it's coming because the blockchain is the infrastructure of the future. I deeply believe in this. I like NFTs. I mean, I don't really know if I want to buy one right now, but I like the idea of them, and I like the utility around them. So if you're able to do that in Excel, if you're able to bring that in, you are going to be really ahead of the game. I would love to see someone do that. The world is huge. America doesn't have to dominate. Like, there's so much space for so many people to think of things differently, and we do need other people thinking about these, because like clearly, this is not something that only people, in certain countries should think about. So that's I'm trying to get at, like, the world is so much bigger than people, at least in my country, often view it. And then finally, data education is no longer scarce. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? Okay, so those are the future thoughts. Let's do questions. I technically don't count this as going over if you guys want to stay, because I'm done with my content piece. Okay, so Michael asks, interestingly, I'm to start a book project with Pack tomorrow. I'm going to write 13 chapter books in 6 months. I'm to write about 30 pages every 2 weeks. I think, is this schedule an easy one? Or what advice do you have for me? Okay, so that was close to the schedule I had for dashboards for Excel. It's supposed to take 9 months, and it took 3.5 years. So I found it really hard at the start to really get myself writing, but nowadays, like with my last company, with my last book, I should say, here, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. With my last book, I wrote, like, my book author, he wrote his chapter. It took him about 3 weeks to write a chapter. He'd give it to me, and it'd take me about maybe at most a week to really turn something around, just because I can write a lot now, and I've just had a lot of practice with it. But the major thing here is, just if you want to stick to the schedule, you must remember that the schedule is more important than your writing ego. So just get the stuff out there and put it down and let the editors do their job, because they're going to come back and say, change this and this. Even if you have that in the back of your mind, they may give you advice that would have solved you hours of time. As we say, ask an Excel expert, it'll solve you hours of time. And then Excel experts forget when they're writing that there are other experts working with them. So it is doable to the extent that you follow the things I've said here. Let's see here. Thanks for also, yes, be very close. Michael said, thanks for the advice on the developmental editor. Be very close with your developmental editor. Note that if you no news from them is good news. So if nobody's complaining, you don't stir the pot, you know? Okay, so next question is for conference topics, should I err towards more advanced topics or easy to follow topics when I have no knowledge of the audience demography or their mixed audience? Okay, so I mean, I see you said I did a session where I was once too basic and it felt like my worst presentation, and I even feel sad every time I remember it and lost confidence. Oh, that's so real. Look, I mean, you're gonna make mistakes anyway, so just keep in mind that you're bound to do them and you're gonna learn. But I think the broader thing is, if you have your niche, right, you have your stuff, and this is who the audience is for. In the case of LinkedIn, they came to me and they said, we want you to do like a more basic type course, which is not typically my audience, but it was a lot easier to work with them because they knew what they wanted and I knew how to build it. So if you're kind of pitching your own thing, you should focus on your niche, right? Because you're going to bring the piece of paper that says, hey, this is my conference idea. Here, I'm going to send it to you. On the other hand, if they're coming to you, you just want to make sure you ask the right questions and do the background on the conference, and that will help you identify the audience. But really what I would tell you is, in general, go with the audience you resonate with the most, right? So do something with your niche because that will connect you two together in a way that's like undescribable, that you're not trying to like solve for what is it they need. It's just like you guys are in sync, right? All right, so how do you try to balance the speaking, book writing, community works with the daily running of your business? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question because I'm still figuring it out. The answer to that is you read a lot of books on how to do that management and you just implement the advice people give you. I mean, I think the broader idea is what I said is everything optimizes. So what you got to do is at least once a year, like I always do this, I come up with my themes for the year of what I want to achieve. Like this year is going to be growth. Last year was optimization of business practices. So you outline the things that need to be fixed, and then you figure out, what's the easiest thing that's going to give me the best result, and then you just try to keep doing that. But to be honest with you, running a business is that is the game, right? It never goes away. Like that is the game that you will never figure out, but you're constantly trying to figure out, that grows the business. Can you be magnanimous to share slides to participants for studying? Yes, of course. Well, I'll make sure Michael gets the slides. It'll go out. Absolutely, you can get the slides. When question time and okay, so when it's question time and the audience asks for something personal, what do you do? Okay, I mean, it all really depends. I mean, having some personal stuff is nice. I mean, obviously, if people ask things that are inappropriate, I mean, I'm trying to think what's too personal. Like someone asked you your sexual orientation, or they asked you, in the US, it's considered inappropriate to talk about how much money you make. So like, there's cultural things that people might ask you that you might think is inappropriate and they might not think is inappropriate. So, I don't know. I think that you just answer authentically on how you feel in the moment. You can say, well, that's personal and I don't want to answer it here. Or I think it's right now, I mean, if you look across on LinkedIn, everyone's kind of opening up and being vulnerable. Some people are probably doing that to get the likes, but I think a broader idea here is that everyone's just had a really hard year, and this is just like, needs a testimonial to give it out to someone. Not everyone has the same support, or at least the traditional support networks. And, things like this, and like being vulnerable in these moments, or being vulnerable on LinkedIn, these actually do create a sense of connection. But don't do anything that you don't want to do. Just remember that you are in charge, of yourself and what people know about you. So, you don't have to give any information you don't want. Just, you can always say, well, that's personal. If you feel like telling them, you can say, well, let's chat later, let's chat later. Some people like to ask me about, my tattoo on my arm here, because I have a hot dog, because I love hot dogs, this is a Chicago style hot dog. I'm going to answer that. I don't mind answering that. All right, so we're at 11:04. Do we have any other questions, thoughts, comments? Otherwise, I can turn it back over to you, Michael.
Hey, there's one more question. I don't know, maybe you're not seeing it, but...
Oh, I see. I wasn't scrolling down. No, that's, wow, major operator error. Okay, let's see here. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, I see Federico had also put more to his question, so maybe I'll come back to that. So, Michael, in what easy ways can one break into the communities in other continents, say for most of us in African countries, wanting to get into more active and rewarding North American conferences? That's a great question. I think that, obviously having content that people can point to, like, building up a corpus of content on LinkedIn, things like that, putting stuff out for free. Like if you just shoot for the MVP award, then you'll have stuff out there, right? So that makes it that makes it very easy. I think that, like, being connected with folks like me, because like I love when conferences ask me, do you know anyone? I always dump a whole bunch of people on them. So, finding American speakers and trying to see if you can get in through that network, or not, doesn't have to be American, I should say. Finding people who are running these conferences. I think the broader thing here is, I'm thinking about this. The easiest way to get into a conference is to find the person who runs it. All right. So find the company, organization, and then, I usually, if I know someone in my network who has a connection to the person who runs it, I mean, I believe this is how I met the organizers of Global Excel Summit. I think I saw another MVP was talking about it. I said, hey, what's this about? I want to speak at this. And that's how I got in. So, I mean, that's the way I would do it, is just find the organizers, go find them on LinkedIn. When you're looking, I mean, here's the thing about organizers and people who are doing content acquisition for conferences. They like when you do this. They like when you reach out. Just come to them with your idea. Don't come to them with like, I don't know, I've never done it. Just say, I saw your topics on the X, Y, and Z, and I think like I can help because I have content on that. Okay, let's see here. So I know Federico had said, are you able to address fully the question, or just stress you're just there presenting and stuff? We'll need to know more about their issue. I mean, I definitely was stressed about that stuff when I first started speaking. Having spoken enough now, it really doesn't affect me if I don't solve their problem, because, one speaking session can't solve people's problems. A lot of times what happens is when I go teach in corporate classes, someone says, well, can you take a look at this thing that I have at my computer? And I sit down and I'm like, well, why is this in this way? And they're like, well, so Marty from accounting needs it this way and that way. And I look at this, I'm like, this problem is way, way too big for me to solve. And I'll just tell them that. Like, I don't think you should stress about that. I think that they're just looking for how to solve issues, and they don't know in that moment, and they just need extra help. The other thing you can do is, and rarely does this work, you can turn it into a consulting opportunity and say, oh, I mean, it rarely works because they're not getting the support from their company, so they're asking you, so they're not going to have access to that support to then bring you in. Maybe they could do it one-on-one, which is business to consumer, lower rates, but more fun, and you get to meet people, and it's great. So, not saying you can't do that. Just keep that in mind that, it's not a huge moneymaker, at least not for me. Let's see here. In what ways? Let's see here. Okay, I think that's it. I think that we are good. So I'll send the slides to Michael after this, and then you'll be able to get them.
Wow, thanks a lot. And this is very timely to us. I see maybe you knew what I'm going through, like what I'm going to face, and you decided to come at this moment to share on this. And I see a lot of people state we had a lot of numbers coming in midway, so I'm sure people are pulling their friends in and saying, don't miss this. So thank you very, very much. And I know it's a morning, it's a Sunday for you, start of your week. And I know you've answered all our questions, so I don't want to also keep you waiting, but I see people already saying thanks, they're asking for the recording, they're asking for the slides. So it shows that people have found a lot of value and practical insights from what you've shared. We're very, very grateful. So at this point, I'm just going to have to let you go. I'm going to have to say bye-bye to everyone, to you, and to say thank you very, very much for this amazing session. And thanks for the openness. That's one other thing I think we don't get a lot, and you were very open with us. So thank you very much, and bye to everyone. Have a wonderful week ahead.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Go out there and do it.
So I'm ending it now. So bye, and that's
bye.
it.